Well, there you have it. Now we move to a discussion tonight. We want to understand more of these referendum calls, and we want to know if it's necessary to have such a referendum. And just a reminder, with me in studio is Senaji Anyanje. He's a lawyer, and I also have a political aspirant, Felix Omolo. Good evening, gentlemen, and welcome. Now, I want to get a first question from you guys. Do you support the referendum calls, Senaji?
Thank you very much, Hilary. I think to properly answer that question, we first need to look at...
If you could raise your mic, please.
We first need to look at what the proposed referendum calls intend to address.
Right.
If the proposed changes are for the benefits of the common mwananchi, then by all means we should support the referendum calls if the structures that are being proposed are ones that are actually going to address the current difficulties that have been encountered in the implementation of the current constitution. But if the proposed referenda is on the sole basis of satisfying some political agenda, then I don't think it is worth the effort.
Yeah. Felix, do you support the calls for the referendum?
Yeah, thank you, Hilary. Personally, I support the calls to amend the referendum because of, as youths in this country, we are the ones who have been, in each electioneering cycle, we are the ones who suffer a lot when it comes to after post-election violence. So I think as youths, as Kenyans, we should support this thing. Since 2010, when we passed this constitution, we all agreed that this constitution is good, but there are some few 20% which needs to be relooked at.
Yeah.
I support the constitution referendum, but it should be all inclusive. It should not be used to divide us as youths further than how we are divided now as a country.
All right. I remember in 2010 when there were campaigns for the new constitution, there were people saying no and yes, and then it was agreed we will vote yes, and then with time the constitution will be changed. Now, do you think it's a necessity right now to amend the constitution because it's just 8 years old? Do you think there's a necessity to amend the constitution right now, Senaji?
Hilary, I don't think there's an appropriate time upon which the constitutional changes should come through. As long as the time is ripe, if the underlying issues that need to be addressed, then I think the opportune time is a time when people are energized and are feeling ready to make this great step. Indeed, if there are some challenges, as you will be aware, is that in the current constitution there was the commission for the implementation of the constitution, which within the first initial years of the implementation should have actually ironed out certain issues that need to be addressed. But that being cast aside, even the Building Bridges initiative, there are certain items that have been proposed which cannot be addressed without the current changes that are being proposed. So I think this is the opportune time probably to address these matters if the sole purpose will be to address the national agenda and not to satisfy other political agendas.
All right, Felix, many people would want to question the necessity and the prioritization of this referendum. Do you think it's a necessity to amend the constitution by going to the referendum?
Yes, it's a necessity because there are so many issues, underlying issues, which need to be addressed in this constitution. Personally, I think this issue we have in Kenya, where after an election the winner takes it all, is the one which is bringing so much animosity in Kenya.
Right.
People feel if my candidate did not clinch the top seat, then we are done.
True.
So I think this thing of the winner takes it all should be looked at in the constitution and should be changed. At least it should be accommodative.
Right.
When the election nearing ends, when the winner takes something and also the loser has something, so that we can reduce down the political temperatures we have in the country, because as I've said, it's us the youths who suffer when see these things come up.
All right, there's a group or three groups of people who want this constitution, whatever is being said about it. There's that group that wants the constitution amended to relieve the Wanjikos and Otienos. There's that group that wants the constitution to be amended to have the inclusivity, and this is about the leadership and every other thing. And then there's that group also that doesn't want anything to do with the constitution being changed. It's just okay the way it is. Now, as a lawyer, Senaji, what clauses do you think are important to be amended at such a time?
When we look at the three angles, one of the major challenges that actually emanate out of this constitution is the issue of electoral justice. You'll actually appreciate the fact that the major reason why we always have post-election animosity is the ethnic antagonism that has predicated our election system, such that politicians use ethnic divisions as a platform for gaining political mileage. That aside, the aspect of inclusivity should not only address the issue of having losers obtain something at the end of the day. What we should look at is an electoral system that is just, whereby if a candidate vies for a certain position and they lose, they can respectably and honorably go home without causing any form of unrest. But this can only come about if we have an independent electoral system and we have a system of integrity and leadership whereby leaders are actually held accountable for the things that they do, so that the initial steps of clearing a person for posing themselves for an elective seat should be such a way that the integrity test is met at all times. And if we can be able to achieve this by introducing probably a just electoral system and a strong judiciary which is already in place, I think what we lack is the goodwill, political goodwill. We have systems, but the implementation is a problem. So if we can just reinforce our efforts to have an electoral justice system, then I think most of these changes may not even need to come about, as long as we can be in a position to actually uphold the national values and the electoral justice that we have been long fighting for since independence.
Yeah, we have a constituted body which is IEBC. We will be talking about that. Now, Felix, you've been advocating for the youth, and now there's that group of people. Most of the politicians right now are saying we are overrepresented in the parliament, and even back in our counties, speak of the MCAs, we have more than 1,450, I think. Those number of MCAs are the number of youths that go for that position. If this thing was scrapped off, because we will go for the referendum and we don't know the majority will fall for the MCAs or not, and even for the women rep, if we could be speaking of women empowerment, what's the future of the youths? Because now if we go to the referendum and you are for it, if the MCA's position is scrapped off, what's the future of the youths as far as leadership is of concern?
I think the future of the youth is still bright. The youths of Kenya should not just settle for the MCA position only. We have the Senate position, we have the MP position.
Which also want to be scrapped, the Senate?
Of course, yes. But particularly the youths should concentrate more on the member of parliament position, which also gives the youth platform to go for a higher position, like for the presidency. So when I'm advocating for MCAs to be not to be scrapped but to be reduced, yeah, they cannot be, you cannot scrap it all, but you can reduce the number of the number of MCA per constituency. If you can have each constituency has only one MCA, it can also be good for the country. All
right, Senaji, on the question of representation in the parliament, we have all these people. Let's talk of the governor first. We have 47 counties, 47 governors. We are paying them, and we are struggling with the wage bill. Now, there are counties, if we could speak economically, there are counties that they don't have much to give, not because they want, but because it's just nature where they are. And these are the people we would be like, if they were merged, because there are some people who are saying, if we could have the provinces that we used to have back then, it would be better. Now, look at that county which has not much to give with another county that has developed. Actually, speaking of devolution, there are counties which are much ahead than others, and then here comes now someone who wants to be your family member because they couldn't do it on their own. Do you think we'll be adding problems to problems?
I don't think so. If we can be in a position to actually merge some of these regional blocks into competitive and actually manageable units, which can actually be delineated based on their economic strength and their probably, let's say, the ethnic background, not in the negative aspect, but if we can consolidate, for example, the regions, the counties in Nyanza province, so that we have Kisii, Nyamira, Homa Bay, Migori, Kisumu and Siaya under one block, so that even when it comes to the economic aspect, they can negotiate with other counties as a block. Because what has been proposed is to reduce the number of counties to the former regions, but now we'll have about 12.
Yeah,
the initial provinces were 8, but now we'll have about 12 counties. So if we have these economically competitive blocks, whereby people from the North Rift, for example, provide something like animal feed, then those one in the central and south provide other agricultural products, then people from the lakeside provide other things like
the
fish, then it becomes very competitive, and it also provides a platform for ensuring that even in the distribution of resources, there is some degree of equitability, so that those counties which are naturally or by nature weak are actually uplifted by these other support counties that actually find themselves within the same regional block. Yes.
Felix, take an example of Nairobi being merged with Kiambu. How would that be?
I agree with my friend here that some counties are just a duplication of another counties. So if Nairobi and Kiambu, it's the Kiambus are our neighbors here. It's just few minutes to Nairobi. So I propose that they can be merged to be one county, Nairobi and Kiambu, and also Machakos. Also Machakos is near Nairobi, and during the colonial days, even Machakos was the Nairobi we hear, because it was just the capital city before it was moved here to Nairobi. So I think those 3 counties can be merged and become one fully fledged county.
Yeah, and let's talk about electoral process now. Nairobi, Machakos, Kiambu being put together. Already we have problems with getting a governor for Nairobi. And now, do you think the politics will change? Because now we have different communities, and then we have a school of communities like in Nairobi, but when you speak to Machakos, we can talk of more of Kambas. When you come to Kiambu, we speak of more of Kikuyus. But here in Nairobi, we have a school of them. So how will that go politically? Because we already know our problem.
Politically, the challenges will still be there. But what is actually being proposed is a scenario whereby some portions of these 3 counties, not the 3, there's Kajiado, then we have Machakos, and we have Kiambu. Some portion that border the Nairobi county be brought or merged together with the Nairobi county, so that we have Nairobi will be a branch of the national government, not a county per se, but a branch of the national government that acts as the headquarter of the country, so that economic resources, and even bearing in mind the contribution of Nairobi to the national GDP, so that it falls under the national government under the supervision of a certain the ministry of there's a certain ministry that will be assigned for that, probably Felix.
Nairobi Metropolitan.
Yeah, the Nairobi Metropolitan Ministry. Yeah, so that it is actually under the stewardship of a competent person who can actually be in a position to manage the affairs of the city based on the demands that actually attach to the region, but not as a county per se, but as a specialized branch of the national government to oversee the development and also to continue boosting the economic impetus of the country.
I want to believe we can agree devolution has somewhat worked, and now if this thing of merging will come to be, we don't know whether they'll call them counties or provinces, or we don't know. Will we speak of devolution anymore? And what happens to the Ministry of Devolution that we have, Felix?
Yeah, devolution will still continue. As my friend said, when we merge these counties, they will fall under the Ministry of Nairobi Metropolitan, and they will have a CS, a fully fledged CS, under the national government. So the other counties can still continue merging, but the Nairobi, Kajiado, Machakos, and Kiambu will fall under one CS of devolution, and he will still be in charge of that county, and the other counties will still be in charge of a governor who will be where they will be funded by the national government.
All right, the women rep and the senators, many of the Kenyans don't understand really what's their role, and they feel that these people have been there, they do nothing. Actually, for the senators, they are like, hatutaki senators. We know their major role is to oversee the governors, what they are doing. Do you think getting rid of the governors will help us manage our wage bill?
Okay, on the aspect of the wage bill, I think it is prudent that going forward we can actually look at ways in which we can reduce the number of representation, because one concern that has been cited repeatedly is the aspect of over-representation, by which means we've been able to actually enter into more debts because we cannot sustain the current wage bill. But even that cast aside, the recurrent wage bill, the expenses that are actually incurred just to maintain these offices themselves is burdensome to the common mwananchi. So I believe the proposed system is such that we have 290 wards, we have 12 counties, then we have 47 constituencies, then we have 290 wards. So within these wards, what they are proposing is that we have representation from one female representative, one male representative, then one representative from the youth, and one from the persons living with disability. So I believe once this raft of changes is brought about, we'll have a total number of about 1100 or 1160 county representatives who can actually perform the oversight role. Oversight will not necessarily be based on numbers, but will actually be pegged on the efficiency of the office bearers that actually hold the office at a particular moment in time. So by having a large number does not necessarily mean that the oversight role is going to be enhanced. We can still have a lean number, but have efficiency in the implementation all the same. So I think the call for reduction in the numbers is still something that we can support, although underlying issues such as corruption should also be addressed, so that we address these things in finality.
Okay, Felix, if there's something that has angered so many Kenyans is about the wage bill and the people we are paying, yet there's that group of people who want to have positions for Prime Minister and also the two deputies for them. And so it's about creating positions. Will we be solving any problem if we have a parliamentary system of government where we have a prime minister and then we relieve some duties of the president? Do you think we will be solving the problems we've been having of, say, tribal problems?
Yeah, personally, I'm a pro parliamentary system of government, because I think if creating more position for other people will bring this thing of youths being killed every election yearly cycle, youth being shot, women and children are being murdered, are being butchered. If it will stop this unnecessary death after every election cycle, then I support the creation of more position for the Prime Minister and the Deputy Prime Minister. Yeah.
All right. Now, Senaji, speaking of positions, we have they want Prime Minister and the two deputies, and then there's this group that wants to reduce number. Don't you think these politicians are not being honest with Kenyans with what they want? Do you think they're genuine with their decisions and their proposals?
At the moment, because we have not yet seen the concrete proposal that is being put forward, we can actually decipher that what is currently being aired is political back and forth. Because looking at, for example, the proposed draft of reforms, unless we get a concrete document in the form of a constitutional or a referendum question, we cannot adequately say that these are the things that are intended to be introduced. What we have seen are certain aspirations, probably in the form of the Building Bridges Initiative. There's also another draft document that has been circulating, although we cannot actually authentify that this is the actual document that is going to be implemented. So before and unless we see the actual document with the raft of proposed changes, we cannot say whether it is going to be for the benefit of the people or otherwise. Then the other challenge that we have is that in this legislative or even constitutional process, what normally happens is that they will introduce some very good sections, then in the midst of it, they introduce something, they hide something in within that will actually just sail on the basis of the strength of the other items, but it will hide, it will be something bad, but hiding on or riding on the goodwill of the other provisions. So we cannot rule out the aspect of political intonations being introduced in the referendum. But that aside, we cannot adequately say that they're intending to introduce positions that are actually meant to affect the current wage bill as it is.
All right. As we come to an end for this discussion, since the August poll, Honorable Raila Odinga has been calling for some restructuring of the IEBC or even getting rid of it, and ANC leader also called for the same. Do you think IEBC is capable of conducting a successful referendum as it is right now, Felix?
Personally, I don't think IEBC is ready, and it's not only the Honorable Raila Odinga and the Honorable Musalia Mudavadi. Most Kenyans are very unhappy with the IEBC. So I don't think the IEBC is capable of conducting this referendum if it will happen. So the first thing we need to do as Kenyans is we should have a national conversation if we have we want this IEBC, or they should just pack out and go. We restructure the IEBC, we get new people who are going, and their first duty is now to start conducting this referendum if it will pass through or if it will not pass through. So personally, I don't think the IEBC has fulfilled its mandate, or it's lived up to its own core work which was meant to be. So I think it should just be scrapped, and we find new guys who are going to take over from the Chebukati team. All right.
Senaji, do we have an alternative for amending the constitution apart from the referendum?
Yes, it actually depends. If you look at Article 255, it talks about instances or amendments that will actually require a referendum. For example, defining the territory of Kenya, sovereignty of the people, national values, and the like. There are about 10 items that require a referendum. Other than that, we can have amendment by parliamentary initiative, whereby a bill is proposed, and if it goes through the process of parliament, which is, it has to be introduced by both houses, must be accepted by both houses, 2/3 majority, then presented to the president. Before presentation to the president, it has to be published for a certain number of days. But in the event that it touches on anything stipulated under Article 255, it will still have to go through the referendum test, which requires that it is approved by at least 25% of voters in each county, and the referendum will pass the test of the constitution if it sails through by a simple majority. Then on popular initiative is whereby people collect, this still requires a referendum. So other than the referendum, it is actually the parliamentary amendment, but that parliamentary amendment has to be outside the confines of Article 255.
All right, many thanks, gentlemen, for coming and sharing your insights, and I'm hoping if the referendum is gonna come up soon, Kenyans will need to be educated on what to vote for, if it's a yes or no, and why should they be voting for whatever side they'll be voting in. My name is Dereva Hillary. They have been my guest, Council Senyaji Anyanje and Felix Omolo. Have yourself a good night. Coming up next is Y Mashariki. I can see DJ Tieska is very much ready to entertain you. So keep it Y254. See you on Friday. Have a good night once again.